Good evening to all the grade 12 students and welcome to tonight's session. Now, tonight's session is going to be all about mastering your money. So how you should become or can become a Moneywise student before you embark on this exciting new journey next year. So let's look at how to become a Moneywise student. And you can please take down notes if you want to. I think this is very simple information, but quite important information that can change the direction of your life. So let's start. Now, mastering the skill to manage your money will serve you for the rest of your life. So even if you feel next year and even now that you only have a little bit of money, it is very important, no matter how small or big the amount is that you have, that you plan the money that you do have. So you have to have a plan in place. You have to plan, how am I going to spend this money? And if you've spent the money, you also need to keep track of what you did with the money. So otherwise, if you don't do that, you are constantly going to be in what we call crisis mode. So either you're going to not have enough money, or when you do need money, you're going to have this whole crisis that you don't know how to afford the things that you need. So you may spend your money on things that you didn't need, and then suddenly you will have these bills. So in a way, you need to have a plan on how you're going to spend your money. And hopefully tonight, in a very simple way, I'm going to show you how to set up a plan like that. If you can add and subtract, and you all have mathematics, if you can do that, you're well on your way to deal effectively and manage your money wisely. Right, so your thinking has a lot to do with how you spend your money. And your thinking about money is extremely important, because if you feel negative about money, you become a victim of that. And you want to feel powerful when it comes to your circumstances. So you don't want to fall into that victimhood that, oh, I just don't have enough and I can't do anything about that. Because if you're a victim, then obviously you also don't have control over your environment. But if you become a master of your environment, you do have control. So you want to master your money. And that's why I chose the title, Being a Money-Wise Student, and not a victim of a very small budget. So when you are negative about money, that drains your energy. And if it drains your energy, it's hard to make positive changes or to make a difference. So you're in crisis mode, you stay in victim mode. So we need to change your thinking. So let me give you a few ideas on negative thinking and positive thinking about money. So instead of saying, I wish I had more money, and maybe there are a few of you that have said that many times, I know I have, rather than saying, I wish I had more money, rather say, with my spending plan, I always seem to have enough. And if you just look at that sentence, you will notice that it gives you a bit more energy than saying, oh, I wish I just had more money, or I don't have enough money. The other one is, what am I going to do versus I'll make a plan. So if you say, I'll make a plan, you again are in control of your life. And when you start saying that, you're going to have the energy to make a good plan to deal with your money. Or I can't afford it, change that to, I wonder how can I afford it? So I need a laptop in my second or my third year as a student. It is a big expense. Instead of saying I'll never be able to afford a laptop, if you start saying, I wonder how I will be able to afford a laptop in my second or third year, then your creative juices will start flowing and you will come up with a good plan. And I'm going to show you a little plan as well, if that is one of your needs. Another one is, I dread the bills, or I dread the accounts. I welcome the bills. So just change your language when you think about money, so to get yourself out of that victim mode and to give yourself the needed energy. Right, so 3 things that we're going to discuss tonight and that we need to know when we talk about money. And that is simply what comes in, obviously what goes out, and then what are my priorities, the things you would like to spend your money on. So we're going to start with what comes in. You need to know how much money you really have, because we can often either underestimate it, but often I think overestimate what is coming in and what we can do with that. So if you saw you got a bursary, you're like, wow, I've got thousands of rands. Not so quickly. We need to see what we need to do with that money that just came in. Okay, so what comes in? Let's look at that. We need to know the following. We need to know what our income is per month and where it comes from. And we also need to ask, will it be the same every month? So will my income in January next year be the same as what I can expect in December? Now, there's different ways that you, as a student, whether at Stellenbosch University or a university across the country or a technikon or a college, there's different things or avenues where you will receive money. And the first one would be grants, or a bursary or a scholarship. And the wonderful thing about that, and I think you've had workshops on that already, or you have applied for bursaries, etc. The wonderful thing about that is that you do not have to pay that money back. But then you also could have a loan. So students that are in an unfortunate position, maybe that they did not get a bursary or that the bursary does not cover most of their expenses, then have to take out a loan. The important thing, the important tip is when you do take out a loan, banks are very interested in you and they're going to try and sell you and persuade you. The important thing is I only take out a loan for my education. So if I'm ever in that position, I don't take out a loan for a car, I don't take out a loan for clothes, I don't even take out a loan for normal living costs, I just take out a loan for my education, right? And I try other ways of getting money because a loan has interest and it can be very expensive to pay it back later. Right, and then obviously another way to get money could be an allowance. So some of you may be in the fortunate position that your parents will give you a small amount every month. Some of us are not in that privileged position. I can remember as a student that I did not get an allowance. So I had to study with a bursary and I had to make sure that I tried to apply for as many bursaries as I could. I also tried to excel academically so that I could get scholarships in order to pay my way. But unfortunately, my parents didn't give me allowance, so I had to find casual work in order to pay some of my fees. So some of you may be in that position, but you know what the positive thing about that is? You're getting work experience, so that is also good. If you want to get an extra job, I think the golden rule is never to make it more than 15 hours a week. That is the golden rule. So if you do want to get a job. So a few casual work ideas that I've given you here is things like babysitting, house sitting. That's a nice way to get money because if you babysit or especially if you house sit during holidays, that's a nice way that you can still work on your academics, plus you are getting paid for that. You can invigilate at the university, find out which year you could start asking if you could invigilate. You could demi, you become a demi or a mentor or a tutor for students, or if that doesn't work for you, a waiter. But I would start in the university community and then work out from there. But there are ways that you can do casual work and still get to your academics as well, and that will help you to fill those gaps that you have with your finances. All right, so now you've worked out what money has come in. Now you need to know what goes out. And we'll get back to that a bit later as well. But there's two major things that go out. And the first is big items. And I'm going to show you some of the big items and the fees that you can expect. And maybe some of you are already aware of that. But there's big items, and then there is your monthly small items, which is your normal living expenses as a student. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail in a few minutes' time. And then thirdly, you need to also ask, what are my priorities, the things that I would like to spend money on? I need to know what my needs are, and I need to know specifically what my needs are every month. And if you've got it written down, much better, because you can often underestimate your needs. And that's why in the third or the second week even of a month, you run out of money. All right, so now we need to know what our needs are. So a little exercise for you is just to figure out, and you can just quickly discuss that in a group. If you look at needs and wants, and you look at this this specifically. What do you think? And you can even answer me here. Clothes and food, is that a need or a want? Just see if you can just decide. So figure out what a need is and what a want is. Clothes and food, is that a need or is that a want? Right, and they both, I'm not getting responses yet, but they both are, I think, needs. Right, you need that. You can't go without clothes on campus, and you can't go without food. Fast food, foods and Nintendo games, what's that? Discuss that quickly. Right, here I've got an answer. It is a fast foods and Nintendo games, the second one. Right, you're right with the first one. Fast foods, what would you say that is? I've got a student typing. Right, those are wants. And often you find students in the cafeterias that are spending their money on wants that you don't necessarily need instead of the things that you need. And that's where your money often disappears. Right, music and candy, needs or wants for a student? Waiting for a reply again. Right, those are also wants. Sugary cereal and transport. What do you say sugary cereal is? Let's hear. That's an interesting one. Sugary cereal. Right, sugary cereal is a want. There's much more healthy cereals. And transport? Transport. Right, transport is a need. Designer clothes and jewelry. Somebody said a need. Yeah, I hope it was the previous question. Yes, designer clothes is jewelry. So we see clothes is a need, but designer clothes is a want. And too much clothes is also a want. Accommodation and electricity. Right, needs. Great, you guys are with me here. Textbooks and printing on campus. But this person even went so far as to say in capital letters. Right, both ones, I've got that. Textbooks and printing. Needs, right. Study fees and emergencies. Study fees and emergencies, needs, excellent. Medicine and cafeteria coffee. Medicine, need. Cafeteria coffee that you buy in the shops at the or at the university. These cups of coffee, some said needs, that I would say is a want. Coffee? Coffee is bad for you. No, I wonder if coffee is bad for you. I love coffee, but maybe it is. Ne? Cafeteria coffee is very expensive. You're going to see your money disappear if you buy coffee at shops. So rather go and buy a tin of coffee and make your own coffee in res, rather than buying it, because that little 25 Rand every day adds up in a month's time if you make those little sums. All right. So now we did needs and wants. Oh, last one. Latest smartphone and gifts for friends. Latest smartphone and gifts for friends. Medicine is a need. Cafeteria coffee is a want. Great. Smartphone? Yeah, really not a need. You're totally right. Latest smartphone is a want. And gifts for friends, also a want. All right, so there's more important, yes, wants with a little heart. You're totally right. Right, so needs are for survival. We must have that. It's non-negotiable. You need food. You need medication. You need to think of that when you go to campus. And you also need money for emergencies, and we'll talk about that. Saving up for emergencies. And then your wants are your like to have. Those are your desires, your wishes. You don't need it. Those are your luxury items. And that's often where I see a lot of students spending unnecessary money. That's cafeteria coffee. That is that cool sweater that you want. The party expenses, treating your friends, trying to be cool, but in a way that eats away at your money. That new smartphone, etc. So in order to become a Moneywise student, you also need to look at, and the birthday gifts. So to become a Moneywise student, you also need to ask yourself, what influences your spending? And there's 4 things that I'm quickly going to discuss. The first thing is your values. That influences your spending. Then, are you a saver or a spender or an in-betweener? And I'll ask you to think about that already, and we will talk about that in a minute or so, whether you are a saver, a spender, or in-betweener. So I'll explain that to you. Then peer pressure. That can also influence your spending on campus. So you need to stay strong because you've looked at this workshop, and you will be able to deal with that. And then, of course, emotions influences your spending. So let's look at the first one. The first one is your values. And that means, what value do you place on money? So some students would think to be poor sucks and to be rich is cool. And that would be a value that you place on that. Or you would want to have more money, etc. And that is part of your value system. But the first important thing that you need to realize is that your self-worth is much more valuable than your money worth or your net worth. So don't compare your self-worth to how much money you have. You are much more than the money that you have. You are much more than the job that you're going to have, or the title that you're going to have, or the car that you're going to drive, or the clothes that you are going to wear. And as a matter of fact, I think that people that get their value from money or their job title are basically insecure. So if you are comfortable with who you are as a person, then money is not going to make you feel better about yourself. So you first need to acknowledge your worth without money. Money doesn't change that at all. Money is paper. You can make money very quickly, and it can disappear like that. And what is left when you've lost all your money? So in a way, your character and your value systems, those are the things that form you as a human being. Money does not do that. All right. Another value I think that is important is that you must realize that money cannot make you happy. Many people think money can make you happy. When you are unhappy already, money can just make you unhappier. When you are already happy, money can maybe make you happier than you already are, but money itself is worthless. It cannot make you happy. And it's a false perception, because that money that you think makes you happy can only give you gratification for a short while, and then it disappears. Think about when you've purchased something great. The first time you've purchased this new clothes, you feel so wow and you feel so thrilled. And after a week in your cupboard, you don't even know what you have purchased. So it's a false perception to think that money is the thing that makes you happy. It's often the feeling that comes with it that makes you happy, but not the money itself. And then another important value is that the value of giving. I think the value of giving to others, the value of being grateful for what you are, the value of humility, that is the things, those are the things that really give sense and meaning to your life. So if money does not have that important role in your life, you are more relaxed about thinking about money as well. So I hope that these values have stuck with you. We can have a whole presentation just on money values, but I hope that you realize the one point, that your self-worth is much more than your net worth. Being rich says nothing about you. It doesn't tell me about your success, because you could also get money in different ways, and you could break the law and get money. That doesn't tell me that you've got character. So money itself does not make you good or bad. Right. The second thing I want to talk about is, are you a spender? That means you spend money as soon as you get it. It just burns in your pocket. So are you a spender, or are you a saver? So those of you that have little money, but you've already put money away you can think of yourself as a saver. You think before you spend your money. And then, of course, you get the in-betweeners, a little bit of saving and a little bit of spending. So let's just get a bit how many of you, just want to see a few of your SMSs to me or your WhatsApps. How many of you say spender? How many are savers? How many are in-betweeners? So just want to look at the first 3 comments. How would you say spender, saver, in-betweener? Right, I've got a saver here. Great. I wish I had your name here, but keep that up. That is one of the best advice I could give you, is never, ever change that. If you're a saver, that is your way. There's a spender as well. This one says, you said, my mom says, I love money. Now, I can't read your message further. Okay. There's another spender, and then we have a saver. All right, so let's see. Let's hopefully give you tips that you can spend a bit of money but also save. So hopefully after today's session, you will be an in-betweener moving towards saving as well. All right, so let's see what we can come up with. Another thing that you need to look for next year, and maybe even this year, is peer pressure. Peer pressure can influence your way of thinking about money and also thinking about spending, because often we buy things to be liked, or we buy things to feel that we keep up with the rest and that we are cool, etc. Oh, here's an in-betweener. Interesting. All right, so I've got spenders, I've got savers in this group, and we've got in-betweeners. I would say I'm a bit of an in-betweener. Sometimes I do like to spend money, and then I have regrets afterwards, but I pay myself first. So I always save first before I spend a bit as well. All right, so we'll talk about that. All right, so peer pressure. We can often buy things to be liked and try to keep up with our friends, try to keep cool or to be cool. And sometimes we can also have pressure to go out with friends, especially at university, to drink alcohol, which is expensive. Your friends want to go out a lot. You can't go out often without having money. And that's also some of the things that students find, that there's a lot of social activities happening on campus. And what I want you to do is, yes, you can social. Social always costs money, or often does cost money. Save for that. Put that into your budget so that you can also have a social life at university. But we have to plan for that. That's the important thing. All right. Another thing is that our emotions can control or influence our spending. So if you feel down, we can often buy stuff to feel better. Now, remember I said you fought with your boyfriend and now you're going to buy stuff. And I think we all know the feeling of going into the mall and buying this and, immediately gratification, feeling great with this wonderful thing in your pocket now. But as soon as you get home, by tomorrow, you don't really worry about that anymore. It's old news and you don't even know. You can't even remember what you bought last week. Right, but at that moment while you're buying it, you have that immediate gratification. So you buy stuff to feel better. Another way is that we say that you don't often need the stuff that you buy. You just need the feeling that it gives you. And you have to be aware of that, because there's different ways of getting good feelings, and that doesn't mean you necessarily have to buy stuff. And then also there's students that often feel guilty. They fought with somebody, so they buy sorry gifts. And there's better ways of dealing with that. Maybe writing a letter, and we don't write letters anymore, but taking a piece of paper and writing your thoughts and feelings down is maybe much more precious to somebody than buying a sorry gift. So think about that. Another thing, a reason why we often spend money is when we feel lonely or bored. And money makes us feel powerful, and it gives us immediate gratification. We feel good, but as we said, that gratification only lasts for a very short while. Right, so there could be those reasons that influence our spending as well. So we need to be aware of that. All right, so let's look at a spending plan. Now, a spending plan must guide you. So I wrote here, if you do not take control of your money, someone else will. And I can promise you, if you don't control it, somebody else definitely will control it. So first thing is, have a spending plan, use it as a guide that you do not spend money that you don't have on things that you don't need. So a good thing is to make a list of everything that you need. And maybe you can start after this workshop of thinking already, coming prepared to university. And some of the things is your big yearly once-off items that you are going to need. And then, as we said, your smaller monthly items. And I'm going to give you an example that you can work with. And I'm going to send this through to you so that by this evening or tomorrow, you will have this whole PowerPoint slide that you can use as an example to work out your own spending plan. So know where your money goes from the start. And also always ask yourself, if I am spending my money, is it going on wants or is it going on needs? And of course, you need to spend your money on needs first, and that is most important. So before you spend it on wants, you first have to make sure you've covered all your expenses. All right, expenses. All right, so let's look at the big items now, the things that you don't have control over next year. I'm going to give you Stellenbosch University's example of funds. Or fees, but that would be very similar maybe in many universities. So work at this as an average. All right, so here's a spending plan on the big items. So here you could see what comes in. The student on the left side said bursaries, loans, casual work allowance. We've already discussed that. And then in the right side, the red is your needs. Those are things you will need money for. And then the green is more other things that you must also consider. So firstly, university fees, tuition fees. Remember, there's also registration. And then also be careful of late fees, because late fees at university is often fined. So make sure you know when you have to register and make sure that you pay that on time. Then you have res or housing or renting. And if you have that, you will have to have a deposit. Now, another thing you should consider is maybe there's a cheap apartment somewhere, but you have to consider transport. So now maybe res is a little bit more expensive, but res is walking distance from campus, so you don't need a year's transport. So take those things into consideration before you decide, am I going to stay in a private house a little bit further from campus, but then I have to take a taxi or a bus to campus, or am I going to stay in a res closer to campus? So often students don't think of the transport costs. All right, and then also if you're going to stay in a house or you're going to rent with a roommate so that you can split the rent and all the utilities rather than going on your own. And then there's books, textbooks and printing costs. I'm going to give you a bit of ideas on what to do there just now. This can be quite expensive, your textbooks. I'm going to give you a few ideas. A laptop, you will see, is at this point not a need, but a want, because there's a lot of computers usually on campus. If you're on campus, you can use that, and you can study in the library, and there's also computers, and then there's computer rooms like Farga and Marga, etc. on Stellenbosch campus, for instance. So laptops is not necessarily something you need, and it's not urgent. There are other options for you. Then I've also included things that students told me to remind you of, and that is, I asked my students in the class, linen. Sometimes you need to bring linen. You need a desk lamp and also a bag. So sometimes if you've got a lot of books and you're going between classes, see if you can use the bag you're using now, but just consider that may be a once-off item that you would need. All right, so let's quickly look at tuition fees at Stellenbosch, for instance. So I just want to give you an idea. I hope you can see there. If you're going to do BSc programs, that ranges from about, there's agri-sciences, about 48,000 to about 58,000 if you look at earth sciences. If you're going to think of engineering, and these are for 2020 fees, engineering is about 62,000 a year. If you think of medicine, that ranges from nursing, midwifery, from about 47,000 tuition fees to about 69,000 if you're going to do MBCHB, if you want to really study to become a doctor. Then if you look at residences, let's at the top there, top left corner, residences would range from about 41,000 if you've got a double room, which I would suggest, to about 51,000 there If you look at single rooms are always more expensive. I always suggest going for double. Student houses range from, there's student houses that range from about 35,000 to about 45,000. Flats on campus at Stellenbosch ranging from about 38,000 to about 49,000. In Tygerberg, if you're going to study medicine, reses range from about 31,000 to up to 56,000. And then at the top, bottom here, you will see meal quotas. That means 3 standard meals 7 times a week. That ranges to about, or comes to about 25,000 a year. And then there's also affiliation fees. And then I just want to quickly show you the registration fees when you study. The study fees would be for undergraduate programs to register is about 14,000 at Stellenbosch, and then the residence fees is about 13,600. Your first installment must be payable at must be fully payable at registration, right? So there's your first installment. So that adds up to about these fees to register your res, your housing, your food for the year. If you're going to eat in a res, adds up to between 100,000 to 150,000 rand a year, right? So you would notice that you would need a spending plan, right? Now, what you do after you've taken your income, what you're going to get for that year, and you subtract these fees, 100,000 to 150,000, then you look at what's left. That what is left is then divided by 9 if you're going to work just on the number of months that you're physically on campus, or if you're going to be on campus for the whole 12 months, you're going to divide what is left by 12 to give you an idea of what your monthly income is. So I hope that makes sense. All right. So let's look at, so you said your yearly income that you got from bursary, scholarship, doing extra work, whatever, minus large one-item expenses that ranges between 100 and 150,000. And that what is left then becomes part of your normal living expenses. All right, so divide that by the number of months that you need to be on campus for that year, and that becomes your living expenses per month. All right, so now let's look at your normal living expenses. Right, so here I've got a spending plan. Again, on the left side, you've got all your income, and then at the bottom in the left column, you would see there is the gross that is left after the big items is subtracted. There you see it. And then divided by either 9 or by 12. Now, I've given you some ideas of living expenses. Again, the red is needs. You need to have money for that. The others are options as well, wants, but of course, there's also needs really there. So basically, all of that is needs. But let's start with firstly saving, which means pay yourself first. That should be your first priority. So for every 100 Rand, I always tell students, save 10%. So 10 Rand of that 100 Rand, put that into a savings account. So always pay yourself first. There has to be something that you're going to save. All right, so even if you don't have a lot of money, see if you can do that. Start that habit as soon as possible. Then your transport, the second one on that list is transport. Obviously, if you can walk to class, so much better. If you've got a bicycle, so much better, because a car is not a good option. It takes fuel. You need to pay for parking. You need to pay for insurance, and there's maintenance. So I would not go for that unless I would rather try and see if I can get closer to campus. Then food. Feeding yourself on a small budget. I'm going to give you a few ideas on what to do. Toiletries as well. Do comparative shopping when you buy toiletries. Buy at the cheapest shops. See if you can find the cheapest toiletries. Then when you look at your cell phone, yes, you do need a phone, but you don't need the best smartphone because that can break the bank. So look for basic cell phone packages with unlimited texting, for instance, but very basic packages. Then also bank costs. Make sure that you that your bank charges are low, find out. Go physically talk to them at the bank and find out how can you get the lowest bank charges. Compare banks with each other. And remember, there's also interest on loans, and you want to get the lowest interest as well. Then medication. When you need medication, you have to budget for that. In a year's time, somewhere you're going to get flu, you need money for that. When you go, think about the student health services. That's always the cheapest way to get medicine. And usually the pharmacies on campuses are also cheaper than the normal pharmacies in the town. So make sure that you also budget to make sure you've got a small amount for medication. Of course, then I want to go to the next red, and that is emergencies. So you need to have money put away for emergencies. Then you can go to clothing, and I said clothing is not monthly. See if you can either bring enough clothing. Some students think, oh, it's so important to look good when I go to class. Guys, that's only important in the first week. After the first week, you're going to notice students don't. They just wear clothes that is comfortable. So you don't have to keep up with the Joneses. You think at university you need to look cool. It's very soon you're going to realize you wasted money on clothes that you didn't need. You don't need high heels. You need flatties. You need techies and stuff to get to move from one class to the next. So don't spend too much money on clothes. You're going to waste your money there. So plain clothes will do just fine. And then you would see I also have entertainment, but entertainment is with what is left over after you got to all your needs. And then another thing you should consider is your laundry. And then gym is also, you can jog at university. You don't need to pay those hefty fees, gym fees as well. All right. And then also find out about student discounts. Go to a shop and say, do you have student discounts as well? All right. And that then becomes your expenditure on monthly items. Right, so let's give you a few tips for saving. Now, I said here, the accumulation of great wealth begins with the discipline to spend less than you earn. All millionaires will tell you that. How did they become rich? Because they spend less than they earned. You shouldn't pay the bank should pay you for the money that you save there. All right, so that is a very important principle. The next one, same thing. The safe way to double your money is to fold it once and put it in your pocket. So put money away for unforeseen circumstances. All right, so first tip for saving is put money away for unforeseen circumstances like emergencies. Maybe there's going to be, and I've seen this so many times at university, students need bus tickets to go home. There's an emergency at home, somebody's very ill. Often you have students that need to attend a funeral. They didn't plan for those transport costs. That is an emergency. They need to get home. The family can't support them in getting home. So make sure that you have a little bit money set apart, that 10% that you're going to save from all the income that you generate to help with emergencies. There may be, at our campus, we have, for instance, winter schools. That is extra class. So if you've had trouble passing a subject, there's a winter school in some of those subjects, but that costs 4,000 Rand. Students that didn't budget for that then have to repeat that subject the next year. So there are things that are emergencies. There's always hidden costs somewhere. So always a good idea to have a little bit of money put away. Then prescription eyeglasses. You never know if you need glasses when you get on campus. Often you get students that have to do a lot of reading and they suddenly realize that they have problems with their eyes. Or dental work. You don't want to sit in class with toothache. And so save that small amounts, 10%, start with 10% and start immediately. And a way to do it is automate that. That means let the bank automatically subtract that money for you so that you don't have to do it, because if you do it, you're going to spend your money first and then see what's left. But you want the bank to take the 10% away and then see what is left, because having money in the bank is financial security. All right, another thing is supplement your income. We said get extra jobs. You're going to get babysit, house sit, tutor, mentoring. That all will give you extra income that you can use. Then also you could have a flexible savings account. Go and ask at the bank. A flexible saving account is that you can choose a deposit amount and the frequency in which you want to deposit. You could say you want to deposit 100 Rand a month, and I want to do it at the end of each month. And you can have a savings account like that, and you could have the access to that money anytime. That is called a flexible savings account. So the bank will help you with that. Or you can have a fixed term savings account. Now, fixed term savings account, you earn more interest on your money, but now your money is put away. So you don't have access to that money, for instance, in 6 months or a year's time. So you can decide on that time, but banks will give you a lot of options there as well. So maybe a safer bet, if you are disciplined, is a flexible savings account so that you can access your money if there's a real emergency. But then you have to have the discipline not to use your savings on wants or all these luxuries, but only on emergencies and things like that. And then, of course, also find out the cheapest bank charges. So go and talk to the bank as well. For students that want that laptop, for instance, let's say in your second year, you go for the cheapest laptop. You don't want the most expensive. This student says, I want a laptop. I don't want to work in the library. Now you could say, right, you take the price. It was 5,000 Rand. You divide it by months. That's 10. That means I will have to save 500 Rand per month in order to afford that. Right, so if I can't save, a question is check your spending. How am I spending? What am I spending on? Is it wants or is it needs? Is there any impulse purchases, things that I buy out of emotion where I spend money unnecessary? I spend too much maybe on eating out or entertainment or clothing that I didn't need, or on a credit card, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes' time as well. All right, so let's look at textbooks. What do you do for textbooks? Now, often students buy textbooks too quickly when they get onto campus. So just stand back and just wait a bit and ask the second years, did you use that textbook, and how much of the textbook did you use? Right, so an important thing is buy used books. There's always used books on campus. You don't need the newest revision, even if the lecturer says you need the newest edition. So go for the used books. There's always ads. The ads usually come out in the first term, in the middle, at the end of the first term. The second years want to sell their books. So just wait a bit when you get onto campus to see if somebody doesn't want to sell their textbook, and you can negotiate a good price with them. So also there's second-hand bookstores on campus. Go to those second-hand bookstores. Then ask yourself, do I really need this textbook? How many chapters were used? So if the professor only used 2 chapters, then guys, you don't want to buy the book. You would want to copy some of the pages. You can't copy a whole book because of copyright law. You can copy 10% of a book, but if that's about 2 chapters in a book, it's fine to copy that. If you're going to use the whole textbook, then of course you need the textbook, but then I'll go for a second-hand book. Then I will also ask, isn't the book available in the library? So then you have to sit in the library and work after class in that book, and that's another option that I would consider. Or even another thing is you could borrow or share a textbook, and that could also work quite well. And then another option that you could look for is online resources. So look for open resources. Google whether that textbook isn't available, or a very similar textbook isn't available online for free. So do a bit of work there as well before you just jump in and buy the first textbook. They are extremely expensive, and they're going to eat your money if you just walk in there and buy books. Right, and then if you bought a textbook, you can always sell it at the end of the year, or obviously end of the year, or the beginning of the next year for the new first year. So make sure your ads are there, you've got all your textbooks, and you make a plan and sell your textbooks to the new first years, new students. All right, then how to eat. Feeding yourself on a small budget. Now, many fast foods, you would see on the right hand, is a hidden magnet for cash. And I see so many students wasting money on fast foods. It eats your money away very, very fast. It drains your money. So that is a red flag. Buying Kentucky, for instance, on NSFAS, is going to be a huge red flag. You don't want to buy Kentucky Fried Chicken on your bursary money. So think about spending your money on food. So I'm going to give you a few tips on what to do. So the red flag is, as I said, if you're going to use your NSFAS or another bursary and you're going to buy McDonald's or Kentucky Fried Chicken. All right, so that says problem. You are misappropriating or misspending your money. So if it's food in res, ask yourself, do you need 3 most expensive meal plans per day? Because the res incorporates 3 meals usually per day, but maybe you can decide, I only want 2 meals that the res offers, or maybe even the one best meal, and maybe I'm not going to go for the most expensive meal package, but for a cheaper meal package. So think before you just purchase meals in the res as well. Ask yourself what you can consume. So you will get a good idea after your first purchasing to realize how you're going to purchase in the res. And then, of course, at universities, all the universities should have food security programs. I know Stellenbosch University has, helping students with emergencies that don't have food today to eat. There are food schemes on campus, and you will find ads as soon as you get onto campus as well. So there's no need for you not to have something to eat. All right, if you're in private res, you have to learn how to shop. So if you're going to stay in private housing or rent a flat, you have to learn how to shop. So the first rule when you shop is go with a list, and don't buy anything that is not on your list. Then the second thing is compare prices. No-name brands are good. Bulk is often good, but still look at the prices because they catch you. Sometimes they say buy in bulk and it's cheaper. If you take your calculator with you, you will often notice it's not always cheaper. So always take a calculator with you when you go to the shops. Then also maybe look at prices. Another tip, if you're going to stay on your own or in a house, is you only need 1 solid cooking pot. Get a good quality pot, but just one. And another tip is please don't shop when you're hungry, because then you're going to buy everything looks nice. You're going to buy all of these convenience foods, fast foods and snacks, and that means a lot of wasted money. All right, so that's the first thing. What to buy? When you have storage space, so say for instance in your flat you do have a fridge, then I would say store basics, or you have cupboards there to store. So things like rice, as I said, this PowerPoint will be available for you. Rice and oil, maize meal, coffee, tea, soup powder, maybe tinned meat, fish or meat, or veggies, if you have a place to store things like onions, green beans, potatoes. So if you have that, you already have everything you need basically for the month. And then also eat a variety. We often suggest books, pop, or not these sugary cereals. That's not going to do the thing. And then if you don't have a fridge, powder milk also works well. And make sure you have sugar, and then a bag of fresh fruit. Get a big bag of fresh fruit, and street vendors are often much cheaper than in the shops as well. So rather than going to Pick n Pay, see if there isn't bags of fruit that you can buy from street vendors. And then you also help those entrepreneurs as well. And then starchy foods like grains or baked beans in a tin, lentils, samp, rice, pasta, brown rice are good to have. So in the beginning of each month, make sure you buy the basics. This on the list, you can work from this list, and then you can add your own preferences after that. But that gives you a good basic. Then if you can't cook, here's a recipe. I've also thought of that. So let's start those of you that can't cook. So what you need is an onion. You need oil to fry the onion in. You can add meat. You brown it on both sides in that pot or that pan. You add chunks of veg. I want you to eat veg because it's good for you. It helps your brain. You add a bit of water in the pot, a spoonful of soup powder or stock, which is very inexpensive, so quite cheap, and a little bit of salt. You close the pot. You turn the heat down, otherwise you're going to burn it. And you cook it for 30 to 40 minutes, and voila. You have a nice meal, and you can even go as far as freezing that meal in bags if you want to. All right. So there is a nice little recipe that will help you as well. Another thing you need to be careful of is things like spending too much money on clothes, spending, especially I think students that have clothes accounts. That is an account you do not want. You don't want to spend money, unnecessary money on clothes, and especially not if you do it on an account. And then also alcohol and cigarettes is extremely expensive. So if you find you have dug yourself into a hole, stop digging. All right, and this can eat away at your money. So be careful with these types of expenses. Another red flags that you have to look out for is if you tend to borrow money, because borrowing money means you have to pay it back. And borrowing means you're already spending money that you don't have. So something in your budget is wrong. You don't want to get to the point that you would have to be forced to borrow money. And then also impulse spending that we spoke about. Things like spending money on gifts or parties or clothes or costumes are all ways that you spend money. That only needs to happen if you have already bought all the necessary things and also the food, etc., that you need for the month. So you've covered all your most important expenses. What is left then becomes part of your entertainment, and that is a discipline that is going to help you for the rest of your life. It will set you free if you can do that. All right. Another thing is if you go home during the holidays. Now, often what happens here is you have learned and changed, but your family has often remained the same. So one tip I can give you is to not go home during the short holidays. Rather go home during the longer holidays, which is usually in July and in December. Rather, in the short holidays, get a job and get experience. Get an extra allowance by doing work and getting experience. So go home during the long holidays, because going home could be quite confusing and difficult in the beginning if you've got all these exciting things. And so I always suggest to students, work out your spending plan for a semester, work that out before you go home. Your first visit can often be very challenging. And another tip that I want to give you is don't make your family feel inferior when you go home. We know you're excited about being on campus, but always remember that when you go home, that is the family that got you where you are today. But a very good suggestion is don't go home immediately in your first term. All right, your short holidays. Stay on campus and get ways of making money. Then credit cards, big warning. Credit cards, close accounts. Be careful with credit, because your past credit becomes your future credit. And I always say cash is king. Plastic is dangerous. If you're not extremely disciplined, it's easy to forget that you are spending money when you have a card. Now, if something costs 100 Rand and you only have 99 Rand in your pocket, you can't buy that. You can't buy that because you only have you're 1 cent short. But with a credit card, it is much easier to buy that 100 Rand, to spend that 100 Rand, even if you only had a 99 Rand. And that is what makes credit cards very dangerous. It's when you have the cash in your hand that you really realize that you are spending money. Swiping a card is the easiest way of wasting a lot of money, and it can get you into big trouble. So be careful. I always tell students, take scissors, cut them in half. That's what you should do with credit cards. Right, and remember that in a credit card, you have monthly installments to pay, and there's interest, and that interest is extremely high. It's about 18 to 20% that interest is added every month. And then if you don't pay off the minimum amount every month, you have cumulative interest. They put interest onto the interest that you own. And what you're going to notice, it's going to become more and more and more and more expensive to pay off that, and more difficult to pay off that credit card. So it seems like you're going to pay money, throw money into your credit card, and it just seems like every month you're going to have the same installments to pay. So be very, very careful with close accounts, and credit cards. All right, be very careful with that. Right, so in a nutshell, you pay more than, always pay more than the minimum installment. So if you did go that journey or that route and you have a credit card and you have to pay 100 Rand a month, extra 100 Rand a month, then make it 110 Rand a month when you pay back. All right, so start taking control of your finances. So the first thing in a nutshell is set up a spending plan, make it an essential part of your life. Set limits on your spending. Review your mistakes. Learn from them. Be realistic about your spending. Look at your first month, look at all the things that you spend money on. Keep track of that, especially in your first month. And then also having a sense of control of your finances from day one creates a better future for yourself. So develop your spending plan, and by that create a better future for yourself. And remember again, mastering the skill of managing your money will serve you for the rest of your life. So I hope after this session that you will be more money wise, that you will think before you spend your money, and that you will be a student that will learn in the 4 or the 5 years or the 7 years that you're going to study, that you will going to learn all the lessons of a spending plan, how to budget, because it's going to, that mastering of that skill is going to get you out of crisis mode, and you're going to feel so much more in control and so much more powerful, and it's going to set habits that you can keep for the rest of your life. And remember, the first important priority is pay myself first. So before I pay anybody else, I put 10% away in a savings account for saving, for emergencies, and then I look at what is left and I work from that. If you have that, you are set for a lifetime. Good luck and all of the best to all the Moneywise grade 12 students. Goodbye.